My first half really began with myself working in the financial services industry. Along with my colleague John Sycamore, we built a financial services company that became an Australia-wide company, and it was a hoot. It was really good. We very, very much enjoyed doing that. But back in 1994, God kind of sort of got our attention. We wanted to certainly have a greater degree of fulfilment in our lives and significance, and around us some tragic events started happening. My wife Sharon and myself knew 7 people who suicided that year, and it just sent us into deep pain, and we were so frustrated because our friends were going to an eternity without Christ, and our city had churches all over it, but it was like the churches were inaccessible to our friends who were dying because they just didn't have a hope. In 1999, I had a God moment, if you like. It wasn't just a moment, it lasted about a week, and God just broke through into my life in an incredible way. And by this stage, Sharon and I had been pastoring a church for 5 years, whilst I was also full-time in the business world. So we'd planted a church from scratch. There were just 4 of us in the core team that initially started the church. And the church was providing a great deal of fulfilment, but I knew that I couldn't do both long term. Putting in crazy hours in the church as well as crazy hours at work and travelling through work. But in March 1999, God broke through and He showed me that clearly by the end of the year certain things would happen. It was a clear sense of a time to move. And sure enough, all of the things that He showed me early in '99 happened later that year, with the result being that we actually sold our company. At the point where God told me that our company would be sold, from there to when we actually sold it, the value of our shares went up 15 times. And a buyer came out from left field really and purchased the company, and I knew that was the time that God had set aside for me to make a significant change in my life. For me, giving up the baby, if you like, the company, was something that I was prepared and ready to do because I already had something that was there to fill the gap. I loved the work, I just loved working with a company that I'd felt a certain sense of God's call. And so it wasn't like I was stepping into an unknown or stepping into a void, rather I was stepping into something else that I'd already started.
I guess for me, I was always worried about whether when he left business, whether he would find church and God stuff stimulating enough. And I also wondered how he would go working with people who weren't as high-flying as him or as stimulating. You know, in the business world you tend to hang around people who are driven, who want to accomplish big goals, big picture things. But then when you're working with things that are more grassroots, say like church or charity organisations, you then have to work with a whole range of people who aren't necessarily that driven or that skilled or think even the leadership things that you think about or lie awake at night thinking about the things that you will lie awake. So I guess I was worried about how he would cope with that. I also knew that whatever money he got from selling the business, I knew that all of that would go towards the kingdom. So, and that was fine, but I also know what churches also pay, so there's always that kind of tension that you do live with. Not that it was a big issue, but it's a practical issue when you also want to give the kids, your own kids, the best future that you possibly can. Well, I guess we do a lot of things. We do birthday parties, we do functions, we church plant, we run life groups, we run recovery groups, we are involved in advocating for political change and welfare change. We're involved in our local council strategy, we're involved in our local high schools where we influence policy makers, and then on the next day we can sort of be sitting with somebody having we're not smoking, but they're having a smoke and just talking about, you know, life. So it's a very varied thing that we do, and we're working with a vast range of people. Doing that with Tim, that's always interesting because Tim's not always around because he's often off wanting to conquer the world. So that's been an interesting journey, and I suppose it's also been interesting because he hasn't been well. So when we actually went into launching this whole project, he went and had a stroke. So, and he's had 2 major ones since then. So it's kind of like a lot of things that he would normally have done or put on the ground as a business person with that set of skills, he hasn't been able to do because he just hasn't been well enough, hasn't been able to do the man hours. So for me, working with him, it's been about learning a little bit more about his world and how organisations work and how business works, and acquiring those skills to kind of fill in for the parts where he just hasn't been able to do that. So that's been a real challenge for me because I come from a social work background, so I understand people and I understand how people work, and I love working with people, but doing all the other things has been a real steep learning curve. It's always people's lives being changed, so when they come to faith, that's fantastic. You know, there's nothing like seeing someone come home and realise that they have a father who loves them and who wants to be with them on a day-to-day basis. But even if that doesn't happen, seeing a mum discover that there are people who love her, seeing young girls, you know, they come into a program and they're loved on for 6 weeks, and you see when they come in, and then you see the last week, and you see, you know, they've got their heads up and they're smiling. That does it for me. When you see a business person come in and they've got a function or they've got an event and they're not sure how their dream's going to happen, and then you just facilitate the dream just through simple things like setting up tables and chairs and making sure they've got everything they want, and you see at the end of the day they walk out there and they kind of had their dream happen, and you've been a part of making that dream happen. That's what makes it worthwhile. That's what keeps me going. It's the human story. It's not how big it is, it's not how many programs, it's that life change that happens. That's what keeps me going.
We've been really stirred about how irrelevant the church has become, the church generally has become in this country. The church is just dropping off the radar screen of so many people. For example, in our state, probably only about 30% of weddings happen with any church involvement whatsoever. And every year the church is losing its ability to touch people at that important point in their lives. To me, it's like the tide is going out on the church's relevance, that the church isn't even realising it. For most people in our society today, the church just isn't on the radar screen as being something that they need in their lives, let alone faith. When we built this building, which is called the Tailray Centre, we decided to build a marketplace that would be flowing with people every day of the week. And we had the analogy of the human body. The human body doesn't stop breathing. Every second of the day it's breathing in and it's breathing out. We wanted to have a building which wasn't just used on Sundays, but which is breathing in and breathing out people every day of the week. Now, we've created this building, if you like, which is really a marketplace. We have a kids' indoor playground, we have training facilities, conference facilities, a cafe, restaurant, a whole bunch of things that we have. But it's a marketplace that is specifically designed to do ministry in. And we have probably 2,000 to 3,000 people a week from the community flowing through this building. And this building is also where we have church on Sunday, and it's where we do ministry. Now, I guess, Lloyd, you were asking me, why do we do the things that we do? And Sharon has just mentioned the fact that I've had some major strokes in recent years. And yeah, a choice would have been to sit back and to take it easy. But to me, that's no choice at all. I cannot stand the thought of a purposeless life. While I have air in my lungs, I want my life to count for something. I think it was Martin Luther King who once said that a man who hasn't found something that is prepared to die for isn't fit to live. For me, I was so stirred by Ephesians 2:10, which said that we're Christ's workmanship, and that we've been made anew in Christ Jesus for a life of good works that He prepared long ago for us to do. And so I went on a journey of actually thinking, well, what is this that God's actually prepared me specifically for? What is it that even before I was born, He has crafted me, and throughout the course of my life He has equipped me and He's resourced me and He's surrounded me with networks of people, and all for a particular purpose. And so it started me on a journey where I had to discover what it was that was going to get me out of bed in the morning, and what it was where quite literally one day will be on the legacy that I'll leave, which will be written on the tombstone. So that's why we do the things that we do.